Ladies and gentlemen, we're live, coming to you from deep in the heart of Texas, Austin. I'm your host, Alex Jones. It's already the 10th day of June, 2015. Our reporters are now in place. Paul Watson is arriving as we speak in Austria. Of course, Rob Dew and Josh Owens have been in place for the last 3-4 days. They got there Sunday evening, and we're going to be breaking down huge developments. The dam has yet again broken on the news blockade on Bilderberg. And mainstream media is calling it the most exclusive meeting in the world and admitting that policies being set and now investigations are being called for all over Europe and the UK. There is a news blackout in the United States. They are threatening 2 weeks in prison and €500 fine if you step foot in the giant exclusion zone. That's now front page in the Austrian newspapers. Convicted criminal David Petraeus to represent the U.S. at Bilderberg. We've got Austrians that are really angry on video about the Bilderberg takeover. And Paul Watson has done an incredible video, 9 minutes, just amazing, the focus he's got, boiling down their secret agenda and their public agenda. That's coming up. We'll talk to our reporters on the ground and more. But exposing Bilderberg will shoot some major holes in the New World Order agenda. That's why we're focusing on it, because it's a window into the real world. And if we get the public to wake up to that, it's a big win for humanity. Here's John Bound's report on the background of the Bilderberg Group.
Welcome to Bilderberg Exposed, Evolution by Stealth. Tonight, we will examine the influence of the Council of Foreign Relations on the Bilderberg Group and document the objectives of the masters of world domination. In order to fundamentally understand Bilderberg, we must look at the origin and influence of the CFR. The Council on Foreign Relations was founded after World War I, when Woodrow Wilson tasked his advisor Edward House to create a fellowship of 150 scholars to formulate a new foreign policy strategy. From the very beginning, the CFR was committed to a one-world government based on a centralized global financial system. A global Congress would need to be assembled, so by invitation only, leaders of the world in industry, politics, media, and royalty were brought in to discuss in extreme secrecy planning related to global domination by the selected elite. The objectives of the Bilderberg Group include one set of universal values, control of world public opinion by mind control, an end to the middle class, only rulers and servants, a zero-growth society, order out of chaos and perpetual wars, total control of education to program the public mind as a servant class, centralized control of all foreign and domestic policies, impose a UN tax on world citizens, expanding NAFTA and the World Trade Organization globally, and expansion of NATO as a world military. In the 1960s, the attendees included Prince Philip, Paul-Henri Spaak, former Secretary General of NATO, former Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, former Secretary of the new Department of Economic Affairs, Eric Roll, former President Gerald Ford, former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, former U.S. Secretary of State Christian Herter, and Special Assistant to the President Charles Douglas Jackson. The final names are especially important, as they boldly violated the Logan Act, a U.S. federal law that forbids unauthorized citizens from negotiating with foreign governments. Violation of the Logan Act is a felony, punishable under federal law with imprisonment of up to 3 years. For more information regarding Bilderberg, please visit InfoWarsStore.com and pick up Daniel Estulin's excellent work, The Octopus Deception. Please join us tomorrow when we examine how the Bilderberg Group manufactured the United States presidents in the 1970s and how these commanders-in-chief conspired with foreign entities illegally to forward the goals of a new world order as the elitist Bilderberg agenda evolves by stealth.
We'll be back.
This is John Bound with the InfoWars
House
Nightly
Speaker
News.
Boehner says fast-track legislation will likely be voted on by the House this weekend. The only snag, they say, is working out how they're going to get welfare checks to Americans who are going to lose their jobs. But it's not just jobs and wealth that we're losing. Senator Jeff Sessions, one of the few people in either house of Congress to actually bother to read the secret treaty, is very disturbed by what he's seen. As he points out, it is a treaty. With fast track, Congress is giving up the constitutional requirement of a two-thirds vote to pass a treaty. But the biggest secret of this secret agreement is that it creates a commission with global governance powers. This commission will be able to modify the treaty without any further input from any country. As Senator Sessions says, Congress would be pre-clearing a political and economic union before a word of that arrangement has been made available to a single private citizen. For more information, go to Infowars.com. I'm David Knight.
Paul Watson filed a very powerful report this morning at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Bilderberg 2015 to focus on rebranding authoritarianism. And in the article and in the video piece that accompanies it, he lays out their secret and their public agenda that are pretty much one and the same. We're going to play that detailed report that really deserves a lot of attention here in just a moment. Then we're going to be talking to our reporters from Austria at the bottom of the hour, Rob Dew and Josh Owens, about the major developments that have been unfolding. There is huge international coverage now of Bilderberg, with headlines like, just who exactly is going to Bilderberg meeting? Bilderberg, who's missing from the guest list for this year's most exclusive gathering, London Telegraph. And those are just some of the English-speaking papers, the English language papers that are breaking it down. It is all over the German, Austrian, Spanish, Greece, Russian, you name it, pointing out that it's violating all sorts of federal laws in our country and others to have politicians meeting to set policy in secret. Every country has laws against this for obvious reasons, because there's no record. Just like there's a congressional record, or even if there's a secret committee, there's got to be a record of what was discussed, and then 20 years later, it's supposed to be released, because obviously operating in secret, you can and will have internal takeovers. You've got people sitting over trillions of dollars of budgets, and they're secret, and they can keep reclassifying stuff 50, 60 years out, as they do now. It's just absolutely criminal. Here's Paul Watson's report, and we'll get into all the other news.
The Bilderberg Group has released its full participant list and agenda for the 2015 elitist confab days before it's set to begin in Austria. But as ever, the topics up for discussion are so vague as to almost be meaningless. And we know that many of the most sensitive topics never appear on the list in the first place. So what's the real agenda of Bilderberg 2015? For a start, it's unusual that Bilderberg is taking place after the G7 conference. It's normally the other way around. This suggests that Bilderberg's role in not only setting the consensus, but making the final call on many of these issues will be pivotal this year. The intense security surrounding the Interalpen Hotel, with our reporters Rob Dew and Josh Owens already having been harassed numerous times by police, illustrates how paranoid Bilderberg are about keeping the details of their agenda under wraps. Artificial intelligence will be one of the core discussion topics at Bilderberg 2015. And one of the most interesting newbies in terms of Bilderberg attendees is undoubtedly Regina Duggan, former DARPA director and now Google executive, and a pioneer of ingestible ID microchips. Duggan, along with Google chairman Eric Schmidt and Demis Hassabis, vice president of engineering for Google DeepMind, will scheme with global power brokers on how to grease the skids for public acceptance and adoption of Big Brother technology that otherwise wouldn't look out of place in a dystopian sci-fi thriller. This all ties into Bilderberg's overarching goal of rebranding authoritarianism. As a result of endless money printing and growing wealth inequality, the global elite has created the preconditions for widespread riots and civil unrest. We already had a taste of this with Ferguson and Baltimore. Now the wealthy are buying safe rooms and secret hideaways in remote locations as they prepare to hunker down for the next stage of the economic collapse. And Bloomberg is now reporting that Johann Rupert, the billionaire owner of Cartier, is worried about artificial intelligence and robots replacing human workers, causing class warfare and social disorder. Make no mistake, Bilderberg wants class warfare. They want riots, because this allows the elite to exploit the chaos, pose as the saviors, and introduce the solution of statist and economic totalitarianism. And if you want to get a true insight into what motivates Bilderberg, look no further than the guy who calls the shots, Henry Kissinger. All the other Bilderberg attendees, bar David Rockefeller, show deference to the National Security Advisor. Kissinger has always been an aggressive advocate of realpolitik, an amoral Machiavellian form of diplomacy and policy making which eschews morality and ethical considerations. And of course, Kissinger has been implicated in numerous war crimes, crimes against humanity, kidnap, torture and murder in places like Chile, Cambodia and East Timor. But what's most alarming is the fact that the 92-year-old Kissinger still advises the Obama administration today. He's been lobbying for years for regime change in Syria, which may at some stage be achieved as a result of ISIS, created partly as a result of the US arming other jihadist groups in the region, taking over half the country, something the Syrian rebels could never accomplish. Under the guise of stopping terror financing to ISIS, which only seems to have become stronger since the US and others began officially targeting the terror organization, Bilderberg will discuss imposing harsher bank restrictions, eviscerating whatever financial privacy we have left, as well as a coordinated EU crackdown on the sale of precious metals. This ties in to the wider war on cash. Numerous voices have recently called for eliminating physical currency altogether, giving central banks and governments the power to directly control your finances under the justification of preventing an economic collapse. At its most authoritarian extreme, this means having to obtain government permission every time you withdraw or spend a moderately large sum of money. France is already set to introduce laws in September which will restrict French citizens from making cash payments over 1,000 euros. Bilderberg is set to intensify this crackdown on cash. Preventing Greece from ditching the euro and stacking the deck against the EU referendum outvote in the United Kingdom will also be a core centerpiece of Bilderberg's agenda going forward over the next 12 months. The EU and the single currency is a pet project of Bilderberg. If that pillar of world government begins to crumble, it undermines the rest of the architecture of global government, including TPP, which again, despite not being on the official list, will be discussed by Bilderberg members. TPP could also be used to sneak through draconian climate change regulations under the radar. Bilderberg is scheming ways of how to bypass Congress and directly implement the post-industrial revolution that they've been pushing for over a decade. These measures, if fully implemented, will bankrupt the United States, cost millions of jobs, and force the country into deindustrialized debt slavery. Geopolitically, Bilderberg will also put pressure on recalcitrant European countries like Austria to further isolate Russia while encouraging the arming of Kiev-backed militias. Don't be surprised to see a major confrontation between NATO and the US before the end of the year as a result of this agenda. After slamming the G7 as authoritarian rule, China has also been completely frozen out of representation at Bilderberg 2015. The hegemonic importance of targeting Beijing's influence in the South China Sea, again, potentially risking a devastating confrontation, will be emphasized at Bilderberg 2015. Another topic up for discussion is the US presidential election. Let's not forget that Bilderberg almost certainly acted as kingmaker back in 2008 when both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were strongly rumored to have paid a visit to the conference in Chantilly, Virginia. The attendance of Jim Messina of the Messina Group, the organisation that ran Obama's 2012 re-election campaign, proves that Hillary